Hello, everyone. My name is Yechin Han, and I'm a member of the Orfeo Music Festival team administrating today's webinar. I am pleased to welcome you all to this session in the new Orfeo Music Festival Spring 2022 webinar series devoted to classical music performance. I believe we have a full and exciting program planned for today. Um, Now I would like to introduce Larissa Jackson, our longtime music director of the Orfeo Music Festival, who has led the planning and development of the Orfeo as well as our webinar program to date. Larissa will be able to answer questions during and after this webinar. Let's welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hello and welcome. Welcome. I would like to say a few words before we start about the festival. And Orfeo Music Festival is an international classic music event widely known for its artistic excellence. The festival takes place in Europe each summer. And from its founding in 2003, the festival's mission is to celebrate and promote artistic excellence with classical music performances of the highest standards and to offer superior education to the new generation of musicians with the world-class artists, to nurture creativity and to build lasting human and artistic bonds.
I would like to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we will be posting the webinar series and of course share with anyone who might be interested.
We are concluding the first season of the new webinar series, Music is Our World, today, which is a 3-year initiative by the Orfeo Festival exploring the role of music in our lives in a variety of ways, but concentrating on the art of musical performance, which lays at the core of musical experience. And now I would like to take a few moments to introduce to you today's distinguished faculty, Sarah Crocker Vonsattel, who has been a member of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra since 2008. She previously held positions in the Detroit Symphony Orchestra and the Colorado Symphony. Sarah has appeared as soloist with the musicians of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, the Syracuse Symphony, and the Cleveland Institute of Music Orchestra, among many others. Some of recent performances include Lake Tahoe Summerfest, the Dame Mira Hess Concert Series, the Bronxville Chamber Music Series, and many others. Sarah was Grand Prix winner of the 2003 Fishoff National Chamber Music Competition, leading to concert tours in the US and Italy with this ensemble. A proponent of new music, Sarah has appeared with I.O. String Quartet and the Talia Ensemble and can be heard on the Bridge Records label performing the music of Paul Rudders and Todd McCover. She has appeared as both performer and faculty member at festivals including the Orfeo International Music Festival in Italy, the Wellesley Composers Conference in Massachusetts, and the Music Friends Academy in Tunisia. She holds a Bachelor of Music degree from the Cleveland Institute of Music, where she was a student of David Abdegraf, and the Master of Music degree from the Juilliard School, where she studied with Ronald Copes and Naoko Tanaka. In her spare time, she enjoys distance running and traveling. Welcome, Sarah. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction, and I'm so glad to be here today and to see you again. And I'm very excited about the talented young students we have to hear. So the first student we're hearing today, his name is Jeffrey Young. He's 15 years old. He's from Queens, New York, and his teacher is Young Zhu. He has an orchestra rehearsal to get to, so he's going to go first. And he's going to play the first movement of Glazunov Concerto, which is a big piece. So I'm probably going to stop him at some point. We'll see. I'm going to let him play for a while, and then we'll stop and work a little bit. So whenever you feel ready, Jeffrey, you can go ahead. it okay if I stop you there for now?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Bravo. Really great. I wish I could keep listening, but I know I have some things I want to say and I don't want to run out of time. So you sound really beautiful, really polished. This piece is ready to play for an audition or a concert. I mean, you're really, really well prepared and you really feel the music beautifully. But I have a few suggestions that I think could help even more. Now, I'm going to mention some rehearsal numbers. I don't know if we have the same edition. So looking at the very beginning, do you have an animato? Is there a rehearsal number there, like a figure 2?
I don't have the music in front of me right now.
Oh, you don't know? Okay. Well, you know the first animato
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
with the octaves and triplets?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really liked that you immediately snapped into this faster tempo, but I think you could give even more to the accents to make it feel a little more grounded. So what I felt is you knew you needed to go faster right away, not gradually, which is good. But I felt like you got a little bit unhinged a little bit. Not that it went too fast, but I felt like your accents by the second measure were digging in more, and that's what I wanted to hear right away. So that's a really difficult transition to make. What if we started a little bit before that? Let's see. I don't know where it's comfortable for you to start, but maybe from like, right? And then get into the animato from there.
Wait, what was the run up? I don't.
Yeah, that was the spot. That was much better. I mean, I think even that first E, I feel like you're playing it really beautifully and very legato, but there is an accent on that first one. So maybe if you give that even a little bit more of weight, it's going to feel a little bit more secure getting into that faster tempo. Right where you stopped, these 16th notes, I really appreciated the fact that you eased into them. It wasn't just like immediate, it was very nicely phrased, but it got a little bit bunchy after the first beat. So I heard ba-da, ba-da-da, and then it was clear again. And it's a register thing, right? It's much harder to articulate in that lower register. So I like what you're doing with the timing, but you might not be able to accelerate quite as quickly if it's not clear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's not just a left-hand thing. I think it's a bow thing. Maybe you need a slightly denser, slower bow stroke when you're on the lower strings, just to make sure it speaks. You could start right on it, or maybe getting into it from a couple bars before. Good, keep going. Excellent. Keep going. Yeah, that's much better. So this character from the very beginning, I thought you had a really good understanding of the character at the beginning of the movement. I have some words that come to mind, but I'm curious what words you would think of to describe this character.
Maybe sort of like a little on the darker side. I feel like because the orchestra company starts off the heavy triplets, so I thought it would be more low dramatic.
Yeah, it's very melodramatic. It's sort of like, to me, if I put a color with it, it's like a dark rust orange, like a dark earth tone. It's very dark. And there's a lot of like motion under the surface, right? Now, what happens when we get to a little beyond where you just stopped? How would you describe this character? This is another character in the play, right?
Maybe like sort of a sunrise.
Yeah, I actually wrote. I was taking notes when you were playing. I wrote sunshine. So we're thinking the same thing. This is much brighter and sweeter and happier. I sensed that you could feel that, and you made a beautiful change in the way you're using your bow. I would love to see more of a change in your vibrato. So how do you think we could make the vibrato a little bit less angsty here and a little bit happier?
Probably a bit on the faster side, because when you're on the G string, like it's like if it's like too fast, and it's almost sort of like it doesn't really work. But
I agree. I think you need a faster and narrower vibrato on the E string, and especially here, just it needs to sound a little bit more innocent and a little bit less, you know what I mean? Can you try starting right on that once, and maybe think more about think about the vibrato coming from these knuckles. I'm sure you already do. You know, the vibrato comes from so many places. We have this, we have this, we have this. Can you think specifically more about the fingers? Not that it is initiating from the fingers, but if it initiates from down here, this is what's really fine-tuning it, and focus more on that smaller muscle. Much better at the beginning, and then as it grows, just as you did, it can become more intense again. I thought that was really nice. There's something I noticed later on about vibrato that might apply here too. In this section, right? Which is like, once again, this more impassioned, proud vibrato. It's a different vibrato. But I noticed you're playing way up on the G string a lot here. And to me, you know, it's a little hard to tell on Zoom, but I felt like you didn't have contact here in some places that I would. And I wonder if sometimes in the higher positions, have you experimented with bringing the hand a little closer? Does that interfere with the way you shift?
not really.
Maybe that's something to think about a little bit when you're in high positions. If you feel like you need to rein in the vibrato a little bit, or have more control over varying it, you'll have more control if you can't see daylight through there. If you're there in a very relaxed way, you know, you're not squeezing, but just resting and using that as a guide. For me, if I'm in fifth position or up, I'm going to be against the violin. And everybody's hand is a little different, so that might be different for you. But that's how I use that. Let's see. Where we just were talking about right there is, do you feel there's a difference in this character versus the beginning?
The beginning of
the whole movement.
I think it's a bit more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one, the orchestra part isn't moving as much. Like, you get, like, the soloist, you get a little more like the free reign of like any rubato you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also that, like, it's sort of like almost like a warmer setting, because like you're like almost in a major key, but then as the beginning you're in A minor, so I feel like the A minor gives more of a dark feeling.
Definitely. It's definitely brighter and happier and major. To me, this feels very proud, right? And I think even when the dynamic comes down in the section, to have that sort of that core to the sound. Could you play this section one more time and think a little bit about that character? was really beautiful. I love that sound. Right here, it's piano now, piano dolce. I know we lose a little bit of subtlety with the microphones, but I still feel like this is a little bit too present. Could you play this a little bit less with that same character?
Like the...
So it has some place to grow too. Because right there it's piano, and 3 bars later you have a really big crescendo. So let's make sure we have room to make that crescendo. That's much better. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I don't want you to miss a lot of your rehearsal, but is there anything else that you didn't get to play that would be really helpful for you to play through right now, or any questions you have?
I have one question about, like, can you clarify, like, what you're doing with your hand when you, like, shift up?
Yeah, it's a little hard to show on the camera, isn't it? So I sometimes feel like, I'm going to show you from this angle. I sometimes feel like when you're in high positions, doing like a really intense vibrato, and it's mostly on the lower strings, that, see this space here? Like you're not really in contact with the bout of the instrument. And to me, like, I know that feels a little scary when I'm up there. I feel like my shifting is less secure, my vibrato is less in control. I'm thinking as you shift up, see how there's no space there?
Yeah.
When I vibrate, I am going to come away a little bit, but my baseline is more that I have a little bit of contact there. I wouldn't even say I'm resting there. It's there's no pressure. It's just that this is a point of reference for my hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And it has to do with the placement of my thumb. So it might be that you play with your thumb a little farther out, and that's why you have that position. I don't want to interfere with what works for you for shifting, but that might be something to talk to your teacher about, or just to think about long term. And again, it's a little hard for me to see exactly on the camera, but I think it might help you in those high positions. Okay?
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for playing. It's really nice to hear you.
Hey, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Have a good rehearsal.
Bye.
All right. So our next student who's going to play is Audrey. Yes, and thank you to Jeffrey for playing. He and Audrey both agreed to do this very last minute, so I'm really glad to hear them. Audrey is going to play the Giga from the Bach D minor Partita. Audrey is 13, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You live in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And her teacher is Angela Shen.
Yeah.
Great. All right, go right ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay.
sound great.
Thank you.
Oh, it's so good. So you're phrasing really beautifully, and your intonation is so good.
Thank you.
What do you think is the most difficult thing about this movement? I have an answer, but I'm curious what your answer is.
I think it's like the clarity. Like sometimes I get too fast and like I continue rushing, so it sounds kind of, yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't think you rushed. I thought it was very steady and very clear. So you can feel good about that. To me, what's really tricky in this piece is the bow. Couple things. Finding that sweet spot with the tempo where you can get the stroke you want and it just sort of works without being overly tiring. But also not getting stuck at the tip. Have you had that problem at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you using the Galamian edition? Does it look something like this?
Yeah, I'm using that edition.
Yeah. And you're basically doing the bowings in that?
Actually,
Changed?
yeah, the some of the bowings are changed.
Okay. Yeah, you did a few things that were different and I liked that. So when we go through it again, I'll try to catch it. So this Galamian edition is what I learned off of, and it's what most people play. But you know, if you go to the back of the book, there's the manuscript, and you can see that a lot of these slurs are not original, right? There are a lot of things that were added to make it easier for us, which is really nice. But it's also informative to pay attention to the original bowing and try to imitate it as much as we can. So at the very beginning, for example, right? That's what is printed. That was Galamian's bowing. The original is, right? Which is a little, it's harder to not be clunky. It can be a little too heavy with a modern bow and a modern instrument. So some people like to do it that way. It's totally fine to do the Galamian bowing. That's what I do. But I try to make it sound more like that. So rather than so when you do down, up, that third beat's going to be a little lighter. Can we try to imitate that even with this down, down, down? Yeah, that's beautiful. Do it a few times. Yeah. So, and then going on, if we were doing the original bowing, it would be, but we're up here now. Can you try that with the up, down? Yeah. So I think the challenge here is to make the second beat, the D, even though it's up bow, feel a little heavier. I mean, you're playing really elegantly, but try to make it feel like a down bow, or sound like a down bow. Yeah. So I've slowed you down a little bit now. If this isn't a comfortable tempo, you can go back to your other tempo, but I just wanted to show you that. So that's one thing. Whenever you have these 3/8 notes, to sort of try to imitate that original bowing.
All right.
Another thing, I mentioned getting stuck at the tip. It happens all over the place, but whenever you have the three separate 16ths, right? So for example, right, that. How do you approach that problem? If you feel like you're getting farther and farther out to the tip and you're getting stuck, what do you try to do to solve that?
I feel like the slur is kind of the reason why it's very at the tip. So maybe the first note after the slur, the bow speed could be faster.
Yes, exactly. The key is to not make it stick out, right? Because we don't want it to be a lot louder. So a couple things we can do. I think the slur we can also save bow. So let me find a spot that's not with string crossings, because that's just even harder. So if the slur can be denser, a little closer to the bridge, and less bow. the first note after it, your sounding point moves away from the bridge a tiny bit, and it's a lighter bow. So we can get back without being really loud. Do you want to try that slowly once?
Okay.
So denser, heavier in the slur, lighter, moving the sound point out for the first note after the slur. Okay, so that's one of the places you did reverse bowing, which I really like. But I think that works too, right?
Okay.
Just the other way around.
Yeah.
Do you want to choose another spot where you are doing it down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up?
This part?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, try it a tiny bit faster now, like just gradually working up to your tempo. Good. Can you be a little heavier in the arm on the slur still?
Okay.
So feeling like a little bit more like somebody's hanging a weight. Good. So that's like a little exaggerated, but that's good because that's the feeling we want. So now to feel that weight in your arm and to smooth it out more again. That's good. Let's get into that spot now, and choose your tempo. I didn't mean to slow you down too much, but why don't we actually just start at the beginning again?
Okay.
And when you get to those spots, experiment with that. Yeah, that's better. Keep going a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that was really beautiful.
Thank you.
It's not a big change, right? It's just a subtle thing, but I felt like you were a little bit more in control and not getting stranded at the tip
Yep.
of it. Great. Do you have any other questions about this? Is there anything? You mentioned rushing. I really don't think rushing is a problem. Have you done a lot of metronome work?
I have played with a metronome. I think it's kind of in my head, but towards the end, like, I think I start getting a little bit more hectic.
Well, there's a lot of string crossings, right? Maybe that's
Yeah.
why. Do you feel fatigued in your bow arm by the end? Do you get a little tired?
A little bit, but I don't think it's a big problem.
Okay, because for me, I that's one thing. I feel like it's really important to stay relaxed in this one so you don't tighten up by the end because it's just so much of the same stroke. You never get a break.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't sound hectic to me, but if you're feeling a little bit unmoored, I would I would use whenever you have like the G string notes, for example, measure 35. You know, that's a spot that has a lot of string crossings. If you kind of use the lower register to just feel a little bit more grounded, that can slow
Okay.
you down if necessary, or just, relax your bow arm a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, it sounds really great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for playing.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. Wait, is the class over?
Well, there's nobody else is going to play for me, but I had
All right.
planned, if it's okay with Larissa still, I plan to talk a little bit about orchestral excerpts. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to stay and listen, you're welcome to.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you so much, Helen. Sarah, yes, we're looking forward to your orchestral auditions section presentation. So please.
Yeah, so let me grab my notes here and talk a little bit. I wanted to talk about my general approach to excerpts and then focus on a few specific excerpts that I thought demonstrated some important points. So first, just a word on orchestra auditions. Whether you're auditioning for a youth orchestra or a college orchestra or a summer festival or a professional orchestra, you are often asked to play short chunks, excerpts from standard symphonic repertoire. And you would often also be asked to play a movement of a concerto and some solo Bach. That would be standard in a professional audition and for most summer festivals, I think, too. Youth orchestra, I'm not sure that you would be asked to do all of those things necessarily. But the committee listening to your audition just wants an idea of you as a well-rounded player. They want to hear how you can play something really virtuosic like a concerto. They want to hear your style and taste in Bach, and also Bach reveals so much about the integrity of your technique because there's not really any place to hide in Bach. And then the excerpts show a range of many other things. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception that I sort of had a hang up about excerpts until I had been on the other side of the curtain listening to auditions and I started to understand a little bit more. It feels like when you're practicing them as a student, you're just trying so hard not to make a mistake and you just want to play the perfect audition and you think they're back there waiting for you to mess up, and it's really not the case. They're listening for so many things and they want to get to know you as a player. It's not just about executing the excerpts cleanly and perfectly. If there's somebody else who does that and is also a really compelling player, then you're going to be in competition with them. So you want to play really cleanly, but you also want to put something of yourself in it. You want to make music with it. It's not an etude. So I think it's really important to remember that. That sounds like a no-brainer, but I think it's really easy to lose track of that when you have a list of excerpts to learn. It can feel a little bit abstract, but it is music. So my approach is that when I am setting out to learn a new excerpt or going back to revisit one that I've played a lot, first listen to a recording of the entire work, not just your excerpt. And I would listen to a few reputable recordings to get ideas of the wide range of interpretations. in terms of tempo and approach and the bowings and the fingerings that the violinists might choose to use. And based on where you're auditioning or your own personal taste, you can sort of form your opinions from each of those recordings, what you like and what you want to take from that. This is also really important to notice the context of the excerpt within the complete work, what goes around it. Because often these excerpts will be in the middle of a movement. You need to know what's leading up to it, how we got there. The next thing I would do is to identify the focus points in each excerpt. By focus points, I mean, why am I being asked to play this? What is a committee hoping to learn about me as a player by putting this excerpt on the list and asking me to play it? So often it could be something about a bow stroke. It could be something about your vibrato, your tone, your ability to play steadily, your ability to play flexibly and to understand rubato and pushing and pulling. It could be about left hand dexterity and cleanliness. It can be about style and taste, understanding that a Mozart excerpt is not going to sound the same as a Brahms. Once I identify those focus points, I will sit down and really start to problem solve with the excerpt. So I decide on my fingerings and bowings. I get ideas from recordings. If you can play for a professional orchestra musician, that's really useful. They often have really interesting tips about how they do things. I will say that for both bowings and fingerings, depending on who's conducting, even within a certain orchestra, they'll do different things from performance to performance, depending on the conductor or the concertmaster or the tempos that they happen to choose. So there's no single way, but you just sort of need to decide on something so you're practicing consistently. And I'll also say, it's kind of interesting, there are certain bowings and fingerings that are really compelling musically, and others that are more dependable and safe. So if I'm playing in a section, I might take a few more chances than I would in an orchestra audition, in terms of like how few bows I can take. Or on the other hand, in an audition, I might want to do something up on the D string that in a section I might not feel the need to, but I want it to be richer if I'm playing alone. So you can think about that in making those choices. Then comes the real bulk of the work, which is taking it to the woodshed and just practicing a lot. I do a lot of metronome work. If you have excerpts with a lot of 16th notes, running 16th notes, I do a lot of rhythm work. For example, if you have a page of running 16th notes, to do it da 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 and da 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 da, every imaginable combination, to make it even harder than it actually is, so that when you go back to the original, it's going to feel easy. I do a lot of practicing without vibrato for intonation, and I have a metronome. It's kind of a torture device. It has a drone on it that you can, if you tune to 441 or 442, whatever, I'll sometimes put the drone on in the key of what I'm playing, and you might be changing the drone like every measure, but play very slowly and tune against a drone for the intervals. That's especially useful in a slower passage, obviously. I also will take certain techniques from an excerpt and practice them outside of that. So if I need to play Mendelssohn's Scherzo for an audition, I'm going to start practicing my scales at 88. Is a tempo that I like to play Mendelssohn's Scherzo at. So I'll set the metronome to 88 and I'll practice scales, 2 notes, doubles on each note, to practice that bow stroke. And really just, when I know I need to play the excerpt, this is what that feels like to my bow arm. The next thing you want to do is play for as many people as you can. So get your friends to listen to you, set up mock auditions, record yourself. If you can play for somebody who's in an orchestra, that's great. It's even really useful to play for other instruments. Like as a violinist, I remember I was preparing for an audition and I played for a horn player once. And that was really interesting because he didn't have any sympathy for my technical constraints as a violinist. Like he didn't care if I had a string crossing. He would just say, that's not even. He was hearing it from his perspective, and that was really useful for me. So anybody you can play for, that's really good. And then after the audition, regardless of the outcome, it's always a really valuable experience, I find. I mean, it's not, in some ways, it's not as fulfilling as playing a concert, obviously. You don't have an audience to give something back to you. And if the audition doesn't go well or the outcome is not what you had hoped, it can be very disappointing, but you still learn so much from it. I've always felt like coming out of an audition, I've built a lot of skills, and I've gotten into really good shape too. I feel good about my playing after putting that kind of work. So make sure you take time to reflect after the fact about what the experience was, what you learned from it, and what could have gone better. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my process. I selected a few excerpts to talk about that I thought demonstrated some of these points. So the first one is Mozart Magic Flute Overture. You know, why don't we start by actually just listening to a little clip of it? I might play a little bit for you too, although it's hard to do cold. Let's see here. Okay, I'm gonna screen share, and this is not so much about the video as it is about just listening. And this particular excerpt doesn't start right at the beginning of the piece, so I'm starting from where I want you to hear. It's a shame to stop it there, but that's where I'm going to stop. That's basically the excerpt. This is really standard opera excerpt, but also a standard orchestra excerpt. And we can look at the score now a little bit. I'm going to share again. Yeah, so can you see that? Yeah, so I've marked this up a lot. I do this at a tempo of 92 to 96. The really big points here are the bow stroke, steadiness, not rushing, and dynamic contrast. You need to make a really big difference between the fortes and the pianos. And also you see we have a lot of sforzando pianos, but also a lot of sforzandos, and those are different. These sforzandi are within forte, and that's a different thing than these. Mozart is going to be on any list because it tells so much about style, and so that's really important. And I can try to play a little bit of this. Again, I've been sitting here talking for the last hour, so it's going to be a little hard, but I'll do my best. maybe just to talk more specifically about some of the things I mentioned already, the stroke and steadiness. See, my first attempt was not that even, but those are within piano. They need to be very steady, but then the 16th notes are forte. So those need to pop out without disrupting the steadiness of the whole thing. One challenge of this excerpt to me is that this spiccato, to comfortably come off the string, honestly feels a little slow to me at the correct tempo. So it's like, it would actually be easier, the bow stroke, a little bit faster. So it takes some work to get really comfortable in this off the string stroke at the correct tempo. And you want to make sure with any excerpt like this, and not just in an excerpt, but playing in a section, you always start from the string. You never want to be leaving it to chance and starting in the air. So really, that wasn't great. So there can be an impulse, but before you play, there needs to be a little contact. And I would just practice starting this one over and over again, because starting it is the hardest part. You might have noticed when I did a screen share, there are double stops there. In an audition, I probably wouldn't play the double stops just to be safe. In orchestra, I probably would, because it's not that hard and it's fun. I mean, we can divide lots of double stops, but those I would probably play. But in an audition, it's like one unnecessary risk. So if you want to just play the top note, you can. Audrey has to go, but thank you again, Audrey, for playing. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that, I think, covers what I wanted to say about Mozart. So the next excerpt is Mendelssohn, or no, actually, I was going to talk about Brahms next. Symphony Number 3, Movement 1. This is an interesting excerpt for a lot of reasons. Before we listen, I'm going to show you a score. So what's really interesting about this is that if you're listening to it, da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, dum, bum, ba-dum, it can sound like ba-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, but it really shouldn't be in 3. It should be da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, and you want that to be apparent right from the beginning. By the time we get to around here, it's obviously in 2, but you want the listener to understand that right from the start. So it's very important not to hit the second note too hard. And I'm going to play a recording for you that demonstrates that really nicely. So that's something that a committee would definitely be listening for and noticing. This is a really important excerpt for sound. So you need to be putting out huge sound. It's only forte, but it's passionato, intense vibrato, continuous vibrato, and I take a lot of extra bows in this one, as you can see. It was interesting. I've always done this with extra bows, but I was listening to some recordings where they didn't. They did the printed bowing, and it works in a section, but playing it alone to get the kind of sound and dynamic impact that you need, I would definitely take extra bows. This is someplace where I do some safer fingerings in an audition. I stay on the A string here rather than shifting down. Here I do go to the E because I want it to be louder, but I want it to be really safe in an audition. The character really changes here at A. That's important. And this is an area where you need to be very careful that you don't lose sound when you go down and register. It needs to pop right from the beginning of these triplet runs and grow all the way up. it can often sound like mush, 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 E string. It needs to be sparkling all the way. These two measures often rush because you have all this fast stuff and then you have to hold these long notes. So it's important not to rush there. Note endings are another really important thing in this. So let's listen to a little recording. Let's see here. This is Karyan. So you notice the horns start. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So that's the excerpt. I can try to play a little of this now. So you hear I'm really trying to get that two feeling at the beginning, and when I play this one, I try to hear the horns before I come in. You don't want it to sound like you're just starting where the violins start. You want to actually hear what's coming before you. Next excerpt is Mendelssohn Scherzo from Midsummer Night's Dream. This is going to be on almost any list, and there's a good reason for it. It shows a lot. Let me put the music up. Yeah, so I mentioned before that my tempo for this is 88. So if I have an audition coming up, you're gonna hear me warming up like this. That's maybe a little fast actually, but you'll hear me practicing like that with the metronome at 88. Just to really internalize that bow stroke. Again, this needs to start from the string when you have this kind of spiccato. Dynamics are really important in this one. Needs to be sprightly and light and piano, but also grow in the crescendi. The excerpt typically ends here, 6 after D, and it's really important to sort of evaporate at the end of that. That last diminuendo is really important. Let's listen to, you know, I'm not going to play a recording of this one because I think everyone knows this so well, but I'll play a little bit for you. Okay, and I was a little long on that last note. That last note is a 16th, so that should be shorter than I just played it. So that's Mendelssohn Scherzo. A big one for steadiness, bow stroke, and character. And that's a little summary of how I approach excerpts.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was amazing session that combined both teaching and the orchestral auditions, tricks of the trade. I'm very thankful that you were able to present it to us. Thank you so much. I think we want to thank you for participating, and with this fantastic session, now we are concluding our 2022, at least the spring's webinar series for the season. And Yaqing, over to you for a conclusion.
Okay. So I just want to say how honored we are to have Professor Vonsattel join our program today and for sharing the knowledge in art. Before we conclude, I would just like to introduce those of you who might have missed the new dates for the summer edition of the Orfeo Music Festival, an international classical music event and a one-of-a-kind opportunity for ambitious classical music student performers to travel to Italy in July to train with world-class faculty performers, participate in their master classes, perform internationally, and gain recognition in concerts. Also go on trips and musical tours of historical locations and make new musical friendships and international network of professional connections. This year, Orfeo Festival will feature the festival program in Vibitano, Italy from July 4th to July 16th. The event is suitable not only for student and educated performers, but also others with strong interest or professional involvement in the arts and music. We would like to thank our sponsors as well that include Orfeo Music Festival Foundation, Mayor of Vibitano, Peter Vogler, Department of Culture, City Council, and Department of Tourism of Vibitano, Italy. If anyone here has any questions, we encourage you to reach out to us directly or by visiting our website at www.orfeomusicfestival.com. We thank you all again for attending today, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon and seeing you all at the festival. Thank you.